The screech of tires still rings in my ears. It's been almost a year, but the nightmare replays itself every time I close my eyes. Rain slicked the highway, and the headlights of the oncoming truck were blinding. Then metal screamed, and everything went black. Not for me, though. I was miles away, at home, waiting for Liam. Liam, my wife Sarah's brother. Liam, the guy I tolerated because he was family. The guy who grated on my nerves with his constant joking and his never-ending need for attention. The phone call came from a number I didn't recognize. My heart leaped into my throat. Sarah never called from random numbers. "There's been an accident," a woman's voice said, robotic and devoid of emotion. "Liam Carter, serious injuries. County General." My world tilted. I felt like I was underwater, sounds muffled, vision blurred. I managed to croak out, "Sarah?" "Is she?" "She's fine, sir." Shaken, but fine. "She's with him now." The relief was short-lived. "Liam!" Serious injuries. He'd been driving back from a sales conference. Sarah had insisted on going with him. To keep him company, she'd said, rolling her eyes playfully. I'd been left behind, stuck with overtime at the office. The hospital was a blur. The antiseptic smell, the fluorescent lights, the hushed whispers of nurses. Sarah was in the waiting room, her face pale and streaked with tears. She ran to me, burying her face in my chest. He's bad, Mark." Really bad. The doctors were grim. Liam had multiple fractures, a severe head injury, and internal bleeding. They weren't sure if he'd make it. We spent the next few days in a haze of fear and exhaustion, alternating between the waiting room and Liam's bedside. He pulled through, miraculously. But the Liam who emerged from the coma wasn't the same guy who'd been cracking jokes and hogging the TV remote just a week before. He was broken. Physically, obviously. He was confined to a wheelchair, his left arm useless, his speech slurred. But it was more than that. The light in his eyes was gone. The spark was extinguished. Sarah, bless her heart, was a rock. She was at the hospital every day, coaxing him to eat, reading to him and holding his hand. I tried to be supportive, but honestly, I felt awkward and useless. I didn't know how to talk to him, how to bridge the gap between the man he was and the man he'd become. Then came the bombshell. Liam couldn't go back to his apartment. He needed constant care. Sarah, with that unwavering loyalty that I both loved and sometimes resented, immediately volunteered our home. "He's my brother, Mark," she said, her eyes pleading. "He has nowhere else to go. We can't just abandon him." I knew she was right. Logically, I knew. But the thought of Liam, broken and helpless, living in our house, invading our space, filled me with a dread I couldn't explain. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "He's family." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Our lives changed overnight. Our cozy two-bedroom house, once a sanctuary, felt cramped and claustrophobic. We converted the spare room into a makeshift bedroom for Liam, complete with hospital bed and specialized equipment. Sarah became his primary caregiver, a role she embraced with fierce dedication. She fed him, bathed him, helped him with his physical therapy. I tried to help, but I was clumsy and awkward, always afraid of hurting him. Liam, for his part, was surprisingly quiet. He spent most of his days staring out the window, lost in his own thoughts. He rarely spoke, and when he did, it was in short, clipped sentences. He seemed distant. The dynamic between Sarah and me shifted too. She was always tired, stressed, and preoccupied with Liam's needs. Our conversations became shorter, our intimacy faded. I felt like I was living in a hospital, not a home. The little things started to get to me. The constant beeping of the medical equipment, the smell of antiseptic, the way Liam's eyes followed Sarah around the room. I felt like an intruder in my own house, a spectator in their drama. One evening, I came home from work to find Sarah Spoon feeding Liam his dinner. He was staring at her, a strange intensity in his eyes. She smiled at him, a gentle, maternal smile. Something inside me snapped. Can't he feed himself? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Sarah sighed. He's having a bad day, Mark. His hand is shaky. He needs to try, I insisted. He can't just rely on you for everything. Liam's eyes flickered to me, a flicker of the old defiance. I remembered so well. Mind your own business, he mumbled. It is my business, I retorted. This is my house, remember? Sarah shot me a look that could kill. Don't be like that, Mark. He's been through enough. I knew I was being unreasonable, but I couldn't help it. I felt like I was losing Sarah, losing my life to this situation. I stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I went for a long walk, trying to clear my head. The anger simmered inside me, a toxic brew of resentment and frustration. When I returned home, hours later, Sarah was waiting for me in the living room. Her face was etched with weariness. We need to talk, she said, her voice flat. I braced myself. I knew this was coming. This isn't working, Mark, she continued. You're not happy. Liam's not happy. I'm not happy. What do you want me to do, Sarah? I asked, my voice laced with sarcasm. Should I just pack my bags and leave? Don't be ridiculous, she said. I need you to be more supportive. Liam needs you to be more supportive. We're a family, Mark. We need to stick together. I am being supportive, I protested. I let him live here, didn't I? I'm paying for his medical bills, aren't I? That's not what I mean, she said, her eyes welling up with tears. I need you to be there for him, to talk to him, to listen to him, to understand what he's going through. I sighed. I knew she was right. I was avoiding Liam, keeping him at arm's length. But I couldn't help it. He reminded me of everything I was losing. I'll try, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah nodded, her eyes still filled with tears. Thank you, Mark. That means a lot. But I knew deep down that trying wasn't enough. Something had to change. And I had a feeling that change was going to be a lot more difficult than I could ever imagine. Weeks turned into months. I made a conscious effort to be more involved in Liam's care. I helped him with his exercises, watched TV with him, even tried to engage him in conversation. It was awkward at first, but slowly, gradually, the ice began to thaw. I learned about his fears, his frustrations, his hopes for the future. I discovered that beneath the surface of the broken man was still the same Liam, the same sarcastic, witty guy I'd always known. We even started to bond over things we had in common, like our love of sports and our shared dislike of Sarah's mother. It wasn't a perfect friendship, but it was progress. Sarah seemed happier, too. She smiled more, laughed more, and our intimacy slowly began to return. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. Then, one night, Sarah dropped a bombshell that shattered everything. We were in bed, talking about our future, when she suddenly turned to me, her eyes filled with a strange intensity. Mark, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I want to have a baby. My heart leaped into my throat. We'd talked about having kids before, but it was always a distant, hypothetical conversation. We were both focused on our careers, on building our life together. Now, suddenly, she was bringing it up again. That's great, Sarah, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. I mean, I've always wanted kids. Me too, she said. But I want to do it now. Now? I asked, confused. But what about Liam? What about our house? We're barely keeping our heads above water as it is. We'll manage, she said, her voice firm. We always do. I hesitated. I loved Sarah, and I knew she wanted a baby more than anything. But the timing felt wrong. Liam was still living with us. Our lives were already chaotic, and I was still struggling to adjust to the new normal. I don't know, Sarah, I said, my voice hesitant. I don't think this is the right time. She looked at me, her eyes filled with disappointment. Why not, Mark? She asked. What are we waiting for? I struggled to find the right words. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't lie to her either. I need more time, I said, finally. I need to feel like we're settled, like we have our lives back on track. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned away, her back to me. Fine, she said, her voice cold. We'll wait. But I knew deep down that waiting wasn't what she wanted. She wanted a baby now, and she wasn't going to give up easily. The next few weeks were tense. Sarah was distant and withdrawn, barely speaking to me. I tried to talk to her, to explain my feelings, but she wouldn't listen. One evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. Liam was in his room, watching TV. I've been thinking, she said, her voice tight. Maybe we could ask Liam. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Ask Liam what? To help us have a baby, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you out of your mind, Sarah? I asked, my voice rising. You want to ask your disabled brother to donate his sperm? It's not like that, she protested. I know he wants to be a father. And he's the only one I trust. Trust? I scoffed. What about me? Don't you trust me? Of course I trust you, Mark, she said. But you don't want a baby. Not now, anyway. And I do. I really, really do. I was speechless. I couldn't believe that she was actually suggesting this. I can't believe you're even considering this, I said finally, my voice trembling with anger. This is insane, Sarah. Absolutely insane. She looked at me, her eyes filled with desperation. Please, Mark, she begged. Just think about it. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the kitchen. I needed to get out of there, to clear my head. I went to Liam's room. He was sitting in his wheelchair, staring at the TV screen. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. What are you watching? He glanced at me, his expression guarded. Nothing much, he said. Just some stupid reality show. I sat down on the edge of his bed. Can I talk to you about something? I asked. He shrugged. Sure, he said. What's up? I hesitated, unsure of how to broach the subject. But I knew I had to tell him. He deserved to know what Sarah was planning. Sarah, she wants to have a baby, I said, my voice low. He nodded. Yeah, he said. She told me. And she wants you to help us, I continued, stumbling over the words. His eyes widened. What? He asked, his voice incredulous. You're kidding, right? I shook my head. I wish I was, I said. She actually wants you to be the donor. He stared at me for a long moment, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Then he started to laugh. She's crazy, he said, shaking his head. Absolutely crazy. Tell me about it, I said, sighing. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us trying to process what was happening. Then Liam spoke. So, what are you going to do? He asked. I shrugged. I don't know, I said. I love Sarah, but I can't do this. I just can't. Liam nodded. I understand, he said. It's a messed up situation. You have no idea, I said. We sat in silence for a while longer, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Then Liam spoke again. I'll talk to her, he said. I'll tell her it's a bad idea. Maybe she'll listen to me. I looked at him, my heart filled with gratitude. Thanks, Liam, I said. I really appreciate it. He smiled. A genuine smile that I hadn't seen in a long time. Don't worry about it, he said. We're family, right? I nodded. Right, I said, but I knew deep down that this was more than just a family matter. This was a crisis that threatened to tear us all apart. Liam spoke to Sarah the next day. I wasn't privy to the conversation, but I could hear them arguing in the kitchen, their voices rising in anger. I stayed in my room, trying to block out the sound. Later that evening, Sarah confronted me. Her face was flushed, her eyes blazing. How could you? She demanded, her voice trembling with fury. How could you tell Liam about our conversation? He deserved to know, I said, my voice calm. It's his body, his life. He had a right to know what you were planning. You betrayed me, Mark, she said, her voice laced with venom. You went behind my back and ruined everything. Ruined everything? I scoffed. Sarah, you were the one who came up with this insane idea. I was just trying to protect you, to protect us. Protect us, she repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You're not protecting anyone, Mark. You're just being selfish. You don't want a baby, so you're trying to sabotage my dreams. That's not true, I protested. I do want a baby, just not like this. Not with Liam. Then what's the problem, Mark? She asked, her eyes narrowing. Are you afraid that Liam will be a better father than you? Her words stung like a slap in the face. That's ridiculous, I said, my voice trembling with anger. This has nothing to do with Liam's ability to be a father. It's about the fact that he's your brother, that he's disabled, that this whole situation is just plain wrong. You're so judgmental, Mark, she said, her voice cold. You're always judging people, always thinking you're better than everyone else. That's not fair, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, it is, she insisted. You're a good person, Mark, but you're also a deeply flawed person. You're afraid of commitment, afraid of responsibility, afraid of anything that might disrupt your perfect little life. Her words hit me hard because deep down, I knew she was right. I was afraid of change, afraid of failure, afraid of not being good enough. Maybe you're right, I said, my voice resigned. Maybe I am selfish. But I can't do this, Sarah. I just can't. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. Then, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the living room. The next few days were even worse. Sarah refused to speak to me, except to exchange terse, functional sentences. She spent most of her time with Liam, whispering and giggling like teenagers. I felt like an outsider, a stranger in my own home. Even worse, Sarah started confiding in her friends and family about our situation. Soon, everyone was taking sides, and I was painted as the villain, the heartless husband who was denying his wife her greatest desire. My mother-in-law called me, her voice dripping with disapproval. I can't believe you're being so selfish, Mark, she said. Sarah deserves to be a mother. You should be supporting her, not standing in her way. My own mother called too, but her tone was more sympathetic. Are you sure you're doing the right thing, Mark? She asked. Don't let Sarah pressure you into something you're not comfortable with. I felt like I was being torn apart, caught between Sarah's unwavering desire and my own deep-seated reservations. I didn't know what to do, who to turn to. One evening, I found Liam sitting alone in the backyard, staring at the stars. I hesitated for a moment, then walked over and sat down beside him. Rough day? He asked, his voice low. I sighed. You have no idea, I said. Everyone thinks I'm the bad guy. They all think I'm being selfish. They don't understand, Liam said. They don't understand what it's like to be in your shoes. No, they don't, I said. They just see what Sarah wants, and they think I should give it to her, no matter what the cost. Sarah can be persuasive, Liam said, a wry smile on his face. She always gets what she wants. Yeah, I said. She's pretty determined. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Then Liam spoke again. You know, he said, I was thinking about what Sarah said, about me helping you guys have a baby. My heart sank. Oh no, I said. Please don't tell me you're considering it. Liam chuckled. No, he said. I told her she was crazy. But I was also thinking, maybe there's another way I can help. I looked at him, confused. What do you mean? I asked. Maybe I should move out, he said. Maybe that would take some of the pressure off you guys. Maybe that would give you some space to figure things out. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Are you serious? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, he said. I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm getting stronger every day. I can take care of myself. I don't need to be a burden on you guys anymore. But where would you go? I asked. I don't know, he said. Maybe back to my old apartment. Maybe somewhere else. I'll figure it out. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Liam, I said, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much, he smiled. Don't thank me yet, he said. I haven't told Sarah yet, and she's not going to be happy about it. He was right. Sarah was furious when Liam told her he was moving out. She accused him of being selfish, of abandoning her when she needed him the most. You're just doing this to hurt me, aren't you? She said, her voice trembling with anger. You know how much I need you here? No, Sarah, Liam said, his voice calm. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. You and Mark need to be alone. You need to figure out what you want, without me getting in the way. But I want you here, she protested. I need you here. I know, he said. But you'll be okay. You're strong, Sarah. You can handle this. She stared at him for a long moment, her expression a mixture of anger and sadness. Then she turned and ran into the house, slamming the door behind her. Liam looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. She's going to be mad at both of us, he said. I know, I said, but it's the right thing to do. We have to stick together. He nodded. We will, he said. We're family, remember? The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Liam started packing his belongings, making arrangements for his new apartment, and saying goodbye to his friends and family. Sarah remained distant and withdrawn, barely acknowledging our presence. She spent most of her time in her room, crying and listening to sad music. I felt guilty and confused. I knew we were doing the right thing, but it didn't make it any easier to see Sarah so unhappy. On the day Liam was scheduled to move out, Sarah finally broke her silence. She came into the living room, her eyes red and swollen. I want to say goodbye, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Liam smiled at her. I'm not going far, he said. I'll still be around. I know, she said. But I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too, he said. They hugged, a long, emotional embrace that left us both with tears in our eyes. As Liam was loading his belongings into the moving van, Sarah turned to me. I still don't agree with what you're doing, she said, her voice tight. But I understand why you're doing it. Thank you, I said, my voice filled with relief. Don't think this means everything is okay between us, she said. We still have a lot to work through. I know, I said. But this is a start. She nodded, then turned and walked back into the house. Liam's departure left a void in our lives, a silence that was almost deafening. The house felt empty and sterile, like a museum exhibit. Sarah and I spent the next few weeks tiptoeing around each other, afraid to broach the subject of the baby. We went through the motions of our daily routines, but the spark was gone. One evening, I decided to break the ice. I cooked Sarah's favorite meal, set the table with our best china, and lit some candles. When she came home from work, she was surprised to find me waiting for her. What's all this? She asked, her voice cautious. I wanted to do something special, I said. I wanted to show you how much I love you. She smiled, a small, hesitant smile. I love you too, Mark, she said. We sat down to dinner, and for the first time in weeks, we talked. We talked about our feelings, our fears, our hopes for the future. I told her how much I admired her strength and her compassion, how grateful I was for her unwavering support of Liam. She told me how much she missed our old life, how much she longed for a baby, how scared she was that we would never be happy again. As the evening wore on, we both started to relax, to let our guard down. We laughed, we cried, we shared memories of happier times. Finally, as we were clearing the table, Sarah turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Mark, she said. I'm so sorry for everything I've put you through. I was so focused on what I wanted that I didn't even stop to think about how it was affecting you. It's okay, Sarah, I said, my voice filled with compassion. I understand. You were just trying to fulfill your dreams. But my dreams shouldn't come at your expense, she said. I was being selfish, and I'm so sorry. I took her hand and squeezed it gently. It's okay, I said. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them. She nodded, then leaned in and kissed me, a long, passionate kiss that rekindled the flame of our love. Later that night, as we lay in bed, Sarah turned to me. So, she said, her voice hesitant, what do you want to do about the baby? I paused for a moment, considering my options. I knew that Sarah still wanted a child, and I didn't want to deny her that happiness. But I also knew that I wasn't ready to go through with it yet. I'm not sure, I said finally. I need more time. I need to feel like we're both ready, like we're both on the same page. She nodded. I understand, she said. I'm willing to wait. I just want to know that we're working towards the same goal. We are, I said. I promise. We fell asleep in each other's arms, feeling closer and more connected than we had in months. The next morning, I woke up to find Sarah gone. I searched the house, but she was nowhere to be found. I started to panic. Had she left me? Had she finally given up on our marriage? Then, I saw a note on the kitchen table. Gone for a walk, it read. Need some time to think. Don't worry, I'll be back. I sighed with relief. She just needed some time to herself, some time to sort through her feelings. I decided to go for a walk too, to clear my head and enjoy the beautiful spring weather. As I was walking through the park, I saw Sarah sitting on a bench, staring at the lake. I hesitated for a moment, then walked over and sat down beside her. Hey, I said, my voice gentle. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. Hey, she said. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Then, Sarah spoke. I've been thinking, she said, about everything. About the baby, about Liam, about us, and, I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. And I've realized that you were right, she said. It wasn't fair of me to pressure you into having a baby when you weren't ready. It wasn't fair of me to put Liam in that position. I was being selfish and inconsiderate. It's okay, Sarah, I said. You didn't mean to hurt anyone, but I did, she said. And I'm so sorry. I don't want to lose you, Mark. I love you more than anything in the world. I love you too, Sarah, I said. And I don't want to lose you either. We hugged. A long, emotional embrace that sealed our reconciliation. As we were walking back home, Sarah stopped and looked at me, her eyes shining with hope. So, she said, what does this mean for our future? I smiled. It means that we're going to take things one step at a time, I said. We're going to focus on rebuilding our relationship, on rediscovering our love for each other. And when the time is right, we'll talk about having a baby. But only when we're both ready, and only when we both agree. She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that warmed my soul. That sounds perfect, she said. We walked home hand in hand, feeling like we had finally weathered the storm and emerged stronger and more united than ever before. But little did I know, the biggest surprise was yet to come. Life started to settle into a new rhythm. Liam was thriving in his new apartment, rediscovering his independence and making new friends. Sarah and I were working on rebuilding our relationship, going on dates, spending quality time together, and rediscovering the joy of each other's company. We still talked about having a baby occasionally, but there was no pressure, no resentment, just a shared desire to create a family when the time was right. One Saturday afternoon, Liam called and invited us over for dinner. We hadn't seen him in a few weeks, and we were eager to catch up. When we arrived at his apartment, we were greeted with the smell of home-cooked food and the sound of laughter. Liam had invited a few of his new friends over, and the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. We spent the evening chatting, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. Liam seemed happier and more confident than he had been in years. As the evening was winding down, Liam raised his glass and made a toast. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I've been through a lot in the past year, and I couldn't have gotten through it without the support of my friends and family, especially Mark and Sarah. You guys have been amazing, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life." We smiled and raised our glasses in response. Then, Liam took a deep breath and continued. "There's something else I want to share with you all," he said. "Something that I've been keeping secret for a long time. But I think it's time for me to come clean." We looked at him, curious and slightly apprehensive. What could he possibly have to tell us? "The truth is," he said, "I've been in love with Sarah for years." The room fell silent. Sarah and I exchanged glances, our faces pale with shock. "I know this is probably a surprise to all of you," Liam continued, "but it's true. I've always been in love with Sarah, even before she met Mark, but I knew that she would never feel the same way about me, so I kept my feelings to myself." He paused, his eyes filled with sadness. "Then, after the accident," he said, "when I was at my lowest point, Sarah was there for me. She took care of me. She nursed me back to health, and she made me feel like I was worth something again. And I fell even more in love with her. But I knew that I couldn't act on my feelings," he continued. "She was married to Mark, and I didn't want to ruin their relationship. So I kept my feelings hidden, even though it was killing me inside." He took another deep breath. "Then, when Sarah told me that she wanted to have a baby," he said, "I thought it was my chance to finally be with her. I thought that if I could give her what she wanted, she would finally see me as more than just a brother. But I was wrong. Sarah loves Mark, and she always will, and I have to accept that." He looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with pain. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he said. "I'm sorry for putting you in this position. I'm sorry for causing so much trouble. I just wanted to tell you the truth, before it was too late." Sarah was speechless. She stared at Liam, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. I, on the other hand, felt a surge of anger. How could he do this? How could he confess his love for my wife in front of all our friends? I stood up, my fists clenched. "You son of a bitch," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "How dare you say those things about my wife?" Liam looked at me, his eyes filled with remorse. "I'm sorry, Mark," he said. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to be honest." "Honest?" I scoffed. "You call this honest? This is a betrayal, Liam. A complete and utter betrayal." I took a step towards him, ready to punch him in the face. But Sarah grabbed my arm, stopping me in my tracks. "Mark, stop," she said, her voice firm. "Don't do this." I looked at her, my eyes filled with anger and confusion. "How can you defend him, Sarah?" I asked. "He just confessed his love for you. He wants to steal you away from me." "I'm not defending him," she said. "I'm just saying that violence isn't the answer. We need to talk about this, calmly and rationally." I took a deep breath, trying to control my anger. Sarah was right. Violence wouldn't solve anything. I sat back down, my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah turned to Liam, her expression a mixture of shock and sadness. "Liam," she said, her voice gentle, "I don't know what to say. I had no idea you felt this way about me. I'm so sorry that I didn't realize it sooner." "It's okay, Sarah," Liam said. "It's not your fault. I never gave you any reason to think that I was in love with you. But why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Why did you keep it a secret for so long?" "Because I was afraid," he said. "I was afraid that you would reject me, that you would laugh at me, that you would never speak to me again." "I would never do that, Liam," she said. "You're my brother. I love you, I know," he said. "But I couldn't take the risk. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you." Sarah reached out and took his hand. "I'm so sorry, Liam," she said. "I wish I could have given you what you wanted. But I can't. I love Mark and I want to spend the rest of my life with him." Liam nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "I understand," he said. I accept your decision. I just hope that we can still be friends. Of course we can be friends, Liam, Sarah said. You'll always be my brother. Nothing will ever change that. They hugged, a long, emotional embrace that seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. I watched them, feeling a mixture of anger, jealousy, and relief. I was angry at Liam for confessing his love for my wife, but I was also relieved that Sarah had rejected him. I was jealous of their close bond, but I also appreciated the fact that they were able to resolve their differences peacefully. As the evening drew to a close, the atmosphere in the room began to lighten. We all talked, laughed, and shared stories, trying to pretend that nothing had happened. But deep down, I knew that things would never be the same. Liam's confession had changed everything. It had revealed a hidden layer of complexity in our relationship, a layer that we would have to navigate carefully in the future. The drive home was silent. Sarah stared out the window, lost in thought. I glanced at her occasionally, wondering what she was feeling. Finally, as we pulled into the driveway, she spoke. That was a lot, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Yeah, I said. It was. We got out of the car and walked into the house. I closed the door behind us, and we stood in the hallway, facing each other. What do you think? I asked. About what Liam said? Sarah sighed. I don't know, she said. I'm still trying to process it all. I had no idea he felt that way about me. It's overwhelming. Are you upset? I asked. That he's been in love with you all this time? She shook her head. No, she said. I'm not upset. I'm just sad. Sad for him. Sad for us. It's a complicated situation. Do you feel anything for him? I asked, my voice hesitant. Now that you know how he feels? She looked at me, her eyes filled with sincerity. No, Mark, she said. I don't. I love you. I've always loved you. Liam is my brother, and I care about him deeply, but I'm not in love with him. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Thank you, I said, for being honest with me. She smiled. I'll always be honest with you, Mark, she said, even when it's hard. We hugged, a long, comforting embrace. What do we do now? I asked. About Liam? I don't know, she said. I need some time to think. I need to figure out how to navigate this new dynamic. But I know one thing for sure, I don't want to lose him. He's too important to me. I agree, I said. He's family. We need to find a way to make this work. We spent the rest of the evening talking, sharing our feelings, and trying to make sense of the situation. It was a difficult conversation, but it brought us closer together. The next day, Sarah called Liam and asked him to come over for lunch. I was hesitant at first, but I knew that it was important for them to talk, to clear the air and move forward. When Liam arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Sarah and I exchanged nervous glances. Liam seemed subdued and apologetic. We sat down at the table and ate lunch in silence. Finally, Sarah broke the ice. Liam, she said, I wanted to talk to you about what happened last night. I wanted to tell you again that I'm sorry for not realizing how you felt about me. I'm sorry for hurting you. Liam nodded. It's okay, Sarah, he said. I don't blame you. It was my fault for keeping my feelings hidden for so long. I want you to know that I still care about you deeply, Sarah said. You're my brother, and I'll always be there for you. But I can't give you what you want. I love Mark, and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. Liam nodded again. I understand, he said. I accept your decision. I just hope that we can still be friends. Of course we can be friends, Liam, Sarah said. You'll always be my brother. Nothing will ever change that. I spoke up. I want to apologize too, Liam, I said. I was out of line last night. I shouldn't have gotten so angry. It was unfair of me to lash out at you. Liam looked at me, surprised. It's okay, Mark, he said. I understand why you were angry. I was confessing my love for your wife. That's not exactly something you hear every day, I chuckled. No, it's not, I said. But I want you to know that I don't blame you for how you feel. I know that you can't help who you love. And I appreciate you being honest with us. Liam smiled. Thanks, Mark, he said. That means a lot. We talked for a while longer, clearing the air and reaffirming our friendship. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We needed to move past the awkwardness and the resentment and find a way to coexist peacefully. As Liam was leaving, he turned to Sarah and me. I want you both to know that I'm happy for you, he said. I'm happy that you found each other. And I hope that you have a long and happy life together. We smiled and thanked him. After Liam left, Sarah and I sat down and talked about our future. We talked about our goals, our dreams, and our fears. We talked about the baby. So, Sarah said, "What do you think? Are you ready to try again?" I hesitated. I still had reservations. I was still scared, but I also knew that Sarah wanted a baby more than anything in the world. And I loved her. I wanted to make her happy. I don't know, I said. I'm still not sure. I need more time, Sarah nodded. I understand, she said, but I need to know that you're willing to consider it. I need to know that there's a chance, however small, that we might have a baby someday. I looked at her, her eyes filled with hope. Okay, I said. I'm willing to consider it. I can't promise anything, but I'm willing to think about it, to research it, to talk about it, to see if it's something that we can both agree on. Sarah smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. Thank you, Mark, she said. That's all I ask. We hugged, feeling closer and more connected than ever before. Over the next few months, we did our research. We talked to doctors, we talked to friends who had children, and we read books about parenting. We learned about the challenges and the rewards of raising a child. I started to feel more comfortable with the idea of becoming a father. I started to imagine what it would be like to hold a baby in my arms, to watch it grow and learn, to teach it about the world. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch, watching TV, Sarah turned to me. I think I'm ready, she said. I think I'm ready to have a baby. I looked at her, my heart pounding in my chest. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded. I'm sure, she said. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I took her hand and squeezed it gently. Okay, I said. Then let's do it. Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. We started trying to conceive right away. And after a few months of trying, we got the news that we had been waiting for. Sarah was pregnant. We were overjoyed. We hugged, we cried, we laughed, we celebrated. We were finally going to be parents. We told our families and friends, and they were all thrilled for us. Even Liam was happy for us. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, I became more and more excited about becoming a father. I started reading books about pregnancy and childbirth, and I attended all of Sarah's doctor's appointments with her. I realized that I had been afraid of becoming a father because I was afraid of failing. I was afraid that I wouldn't be a good parent, that I wouldn't be able to provide for my child, that I would somehow mess things up. But I also realized that I was strong enough, brave enough, and capable enough to be a good father. I had learned a lot from my experiences with Liam, and I knew that I could handle whatever challenges came my way. The day Sarah went into labor was the most terrifying and exhilarating day of my life. I was nervous, scared, and excited all at the same time. After hours of labor, Sarah finally gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. We named her Lily. As I held Lily in my arms for the first time, I felt a love that I had never experienced before. I knew that my life had changed forever. I was a father, and I was ready for whatever the future held. Lily is 3 years old now. She's a bright, happy, and energetic little girl. She loves to play, to sing, and to read books. She brings joy to our lives every single day. Sarah and I are closer than ever. We've learned to communicate effectively, to support each other through thick and thin, and to appreciate the little things in life. Liam is still a part of our lives. He's Lily's favorite uncle, and he comes over to visit her often. He's doing well in his new apartment, and he's even started dating again. We've all learned a lot from our experiences together. We've learned that love can be complicated, that forgiveness is essential, and that family is the most important thing in the world. Looking back, I realized that I was wrong to be so resistant to the idea of Liam living with us. I was wrong to be so selfish and judgmental. I was wrong to let my fears control my actions. I'm grateful that Sarah and Liam were patient with me, that they didn't give up on me, and that they helped me to become a better person. I'm also grateful for Lily. She's taught me the true meaning of love, of sacrifice, and of happiness. She's the best thing that has ever happened to me. Our life is not perfect. We still have our challenges, but we face them together as a family. And that's all that matters. The biggest surprise of all? Liam is now engaged to a wonderful woman he met at his physical therapy sessions. They are planning their wedding, and we are all so excited for them. Liam has found his own happiness, and that makes our family complete. And sometimes, when I look at Lily playing with her Uncle Liam, I wonder what would have happened if I had said yes to Sarah's initial plan. Would we still be a family? Would we still be happy? I'll never know the answer to those questions. But I do know that everything worked out exactly as it was supposed to. We are a family, and we are happy, and that's all that matters.